Okay, hello everybody who's currently watching this live or archived later. Okay, 1 second. Okay. So, the live stream's gonna start in a couple minutes. We're going to do some more work on the Milton Valley Railroad. Yeah. So if anyone's watching this live, I hope you're well. I hope everything's okay. Okay. So last time, let me just switch over to the game view. Last time, we were working on this valley. So the valley comes from all the way down here, where the junction is, down here, all the way up here, and then around here, and over here. So we were working on these passing tracks over here. Not the best view of them, considering the ground, but yeah, over here. Okay. Okay, the stream, it's going to be 9 o'clock in 10 seconds, which is when the stream's going to start officially. And here we go, the stream started. So, yeah, let's just continue. Oh, and by the way, last stream, at the end, it just cut out. My internet just cut out, and I tried reconnecting to try to explain what happened, but the internet didn't come back until it was already quite a bit past 11, so I thought anybody who was watching live would have probably already left. So yeah, that's the explanation for that. Hopefully the internet will stay for this stream. Okay, so let's just continue terraforming this slope over here. Okay. And I do want to keep this a bit open here so that you can see the railway, the tracks, going more around the curve of this valley, because I think this could be a very nice view. Okay, it's getting there. And from this angle, you can see what I mean. It's going to be a really nice view just looking down this way, especially if you had a tracking camera here, so that you can watch the trains actually roll past without having to position the camera manually. Okay, so that's sort of the rough shape. Just need to smooth out a few of these bumps. And make the transition a bit smoother as well. Okay, I think that's good. Okay. So now if we imagine going along here, yeah. Although when we add the baseboards over here, because the tracks are continuing this way, so we need them here, then we can build this area up a bit more to create another higher peak over here, which is going to look good, I think. Okay, so now I'll save, and then we'll work on the other side here on this slope. And after that, we'll put the road in and then start texturing, I think. That's too tall, I think. Maybe more like this. Actually, maybe a bit taller. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I think that height looks good. So, if there's anybody watching this live who can type in chat, I'd be interested if anyone's working on any routes in Trainz themselves. This is the delicate area again, where you kind of want to keep the shape that you've already put in, but you still need to change it a bit for the transition. I imagine this would be quite an amazing thing to do in VR, if Trainz had VR support. Just seeing this mountain coming towards you, being raised up out of the ground. Although I'd imagine that if you're not used to it, you'd probably get quite sick with all the camera movements. Yep, like that. Okay. Oops. Didn't mean to do that. And yeah, these large landscaping projects do take a bit of time to get right, mostly because the brush size in Trainz is limited to this size, but I think it's worth it. Oh, that reminds me. I want to, on Twitch, I've put in the Twitch Pix extension, and I'd like to do a quick test. So I'll add a poll, just 1 second. To see if it works. One second. And okay, I've added a new poll on the Twitch page. If you scroll down, and if you're watching live, could you try to test if it works? Also, I'm just thinking about this route, and if this is set in sort of the 50s, 60s, then steam power would still be used here partially, maybe, or at the very least it wouldn't have been very long after it has stopped being used, so water towers and coaling towers would probably still be in place. So I think that places like this siding would probably be a good place to put those things. And I do want this to be a bit higher on this side, kind of come down to this height we have over here. Okay, just a bit more smoothing. I think that's maybe a bit too steep here. Now about the pole, I'm not sure, I've never used it before. I'm not sure exactly how it works, so I don't know if a notification will pop up or where to see what the pole is at. And I also don't know if anyone's actually clicked on the poll and if anyone's actually voted. So I'll probably need to do a bit more research offline. Okay. And I'd like there not to be this dip on the other side of the track. So yeah, but although that being said, we do need a bit of an area for the player to move their camera. So let's see. Okay, so I'll just oh, I've just seen somebody new joined. Hello, new viewer. Okay, so now I'll just try to I'll put the height to the tracks, the terrain to the tracks, and see what this looks like. Because at the moment we're still working on terraforming. Okay, so what does this look like? Tracks coming along here. I think it looks fairly good, but I would like this to be a bit more flat area on this side of the track, just so that it makes sense that this siding would have been put in this place, because if there is if the slope is so close to the tracks, then you'd think that they'd have had to mine a lot or dig a lot of the slope away to fit the tracks. So it'd make more sense if you could if there was more space. Also, there is still a bit of a dip over here, which I do not want. So just raise it a bit more over this side. Now how does that look? I'll just quickly save again. So if we imagine coming along here, we have a great view over to the side, and then we've got the sidings or the main line to carry along the curve. Maybe meet a waiting train over here past that train, then go back to the main line, and the other side going downhill. We've got the slope to the right and the valley to the left. So we're going down here, along here, and then off down the line. I think that looks good. So, okay, I'll just quickly see if I've got a water tower that would fit. Oh, I'm trying to edit the session layer by accident. And that's why I always keep the session layer, because I edit the route in the session layer, because and I'm going to talk about this in the signaling tutorial, which is part of my tutorial series, which will be uploaded at some point. The thing I'll mention is that some signals, the data, like for example which aspect the signal is supposed to be displaying, is stored in the session layer. So if you put a signal on the root layer and you go and you click on it with the properties tab, then you can choose, for example, with the American signals, which way across junctions is the straight way, because with American signals they show different aspects, different lights will light up depending on if you're going straight or if you're diverging, so going to the side by a junction. And that information in some signals is saved in the session layer. So even if you place them on the root and save the root, if you go out, if you close Trainz, go back into the root, then that information will be gone. However, if you load the session, the default session, or the one that you were the default session, then that information will be saved there. Which is why I always go in editing the default session rather than the root itself, which is why I lock the session layer so that I don't accidentally place a lot of objects on it. So I found this water tower, and it does look a bit British, I think, although I'm not sure. I will use this as a placeholder asset for now, and then maybe we'll replace it with one that's more appropriate later. So now let's see, where should this be placed? I'm thinking, well, last time near the end we did I did think about putting a road in here that like a dirt track that accompanies the track from over there all the way to the siding, so for crew change or maintenance in case something's broken and they pulled it up to the siding, which means that it would make sense for the road to come up to the watering tower. So maybe we'll place it sort of roughly in the middle. So let's see. I think sort of around here might be good. Well, where are the... oh, well, the points, the spline points are here. So... is this a bit too close? Might be a bit too close. Because I was thinking to just connect it over here, but well, I guess we can. I guess I can place some rolling stock to see how close this actually is. Also, need to put on the no payware filter. Okay. So if we put on some of these, yeah, you can see that it is going into the cars, into the wagons. So yeah, I'd need a different water tower for this. Maybe there's one water called maybe water tank. Water tank. Well, that looks promising. No. Oh, that looks very promising. I think I'll use this one, because you can see that it's got some track, and above it you can see the little bar. So this is actually technically an industry, which means that trains will be able to load water from here if it matches their load type, so steam engines that actually support that. Because it's on a grade, and this can't be on a grade, it goes straight, which means that it's in the ground over here. So to do this, I think the easiest solution would be to just put the same spline points in the other two tracks as well, so that they remain parallel. So if I just put this in here, straighten these, and if I get the spline height from the water tower track and then apply this over here and to the other one as well, I of course need to put the gradient back in, but you can see that the tracks still remain kind of parallel. Maybe not exactly, because the rotation of this isn't exact. I think this is good enough. Although this does look substantially lower than the other two tracks. I'll need to replace it with the other track to see if that's still okay with the other track, using the other track, because this one has quite a tall layer of ballast underneath it. So even if the actual track itself, these spline points, are a bit above the terrain, you can still get away with it because there's a fill area. And because if this is placeholder track only, because we're actually using this track, which by the looks of things does have a bit of ballast underneath it, but the problem with this track is that it disappears, the lodding, quite soon. You can see that it's already disappearing back there. So I think that this water tower fits quite well here. And now if we try placing the consist again, yes, there's a lot of clearance here now. Yeah, so that's good. So now let's do the dirt track, because that will affect the terrain, the textures on the terrain. So we need to do that before. So I'm thinking of using this same asset here. Again, it needs to load in the loading. This one, because this is quite high detailed, and it looks quite good, I think. Okay, so I'll just place this going roughly alongside the tracks, and we will probably need to change the terrain around this a bit in some places. I think this is a bit too straight. So maybe we move this kind of like this. Now I'll just flatten the terrain over here to match the height of the road, just so that we have a bit more space to texture. And I will need to flatten back to the tracks, because otherwise some of the track will be floating. Okay, so what does this look like, do you think? If anyone can type in chat. Do you think this looks good? I think this place still needs something, maybe some sheds, or maybe a small office or a signal box or something like that. What do you think? I'll just start clearing a bit more space here, because we do need a bit of space for vehicles to turn around and things. Okay, so I think that we'll probably have a sort of dirt area around here with maybe a little office, as I said previously. So now it's time to replace some of this, well actually all of this track, with the track that we're actually going to be using. So I'll get this track, I'll go to the bulk replace assets tool, I'll get the asset to update, which is the brownish track, and then I need to put this track in the other slot and then update. So now let's see if any of the track is floating. Well, you can see that this piece of track is much higher up than the one beside it, but because again of the ballast fill below the actual track level, it's not actually floating. And over on this side, we need to flatten to the lower track, and then have a look over here. Is any of this floating? I don't think so. Actually, it might be kind of interesting to have these sort of different, slightly different heights of the track. Nope, still not floating. And it just continues on in there. I can see a little bit is floating here, so we do need to apply it back to this end. Now it's good. And it just flows back in here, and that's fine. And I do have the rusty version of this track as well, which might be useful in spots like this for the siding, but actually, yeah, we'd need to place the signal again, but that's okay. I think it's worth it. So I think maybe only the outer track is going to have the rusty. It's going to be rusty because maybe the inner one is being used more often. It's just the outer one that's not. So if I now place this here, and then I need to go back to get the junction lever or lever, because that has, or because it's been deleted, because I deleted the thing, so let's replace it with the default lever. So just replace it with this one. It's on the right direction. And I'm just replacing this bit by bit, so that, actually wait, no, I need to get the height of this point. Because even though these points are yellow ones, they will revert back, sorry, they will revert back to the white ones if I don't specifically set them. So yeah, I'm just changing this bit by bit, and yes, here I need to remove both ends, because if I just add track now on this end, you can see that the track of the actual industry here between the 2 points is still the shiny one. But if I remove both sides and then add a new track, it goes to the rusty one, which is what I want. So now I'll just add this back along here. Just to be sure, I'll set this back to its original height. And then we just need to do the other side. So all the way back here. Get this height. I'll set it, delete this bit, put it back in, get this height, and then I'll need to delete this and replace the signal. Actually no, here it's kept the the lever. I wonder why that is. Yeah, and then I need to put the height back to this one. And yes, you can see that this is quite low in the ground down here, which is actually quite interesting because it means that the track over here is going to be elevated even more relative to it. Okay, so now just replace this signal. Actually, I think it needs to be a bit further back, so like this. And yes, so that's our sidings put in place. So now we can get started with the texturing. Yes, I think that's right. So just fill in the grass first. There we go. Next will be the forest, placing forest. So again, if you didn't watch the last streams, I have two kinds of forest, one which is less dense for further away, one which is more dense for close to the track. So I'll just do the one that's closer to the track first. And yeah, I've got this area of dense forest over here in the corner, just so that I can copy from there. Okay. And again, it's better to place over the track or close to the track and then delete it later, rather than trying to put the forest as far back as you want to have it in the final product. And here I have to be careful not to accidentally click on where this water tower is, because it does count as an object and it will be replaced by the terrain, by the trees, if I try to paste over it with it set in the replace mode, which you can see on the right. There is add mode, but with add mode the trees would also be added to each other. So for example, you can see here, if I click here, the trees that were there before were removed and the other ones were added instead, so it replaced it. With add mode, this would obviously, well, add the objects. So I think we need just a bit more closer to here, maybe here as well. And then I'll get started. Actually, no, first I'll put in the less dense area of forest and then we'll remove the trees. And actually I'll save first. Okay. And again, we only really need to place this where the player is going to be likely to see it, so we don't need to place it on the rear side of this mountain, but we do need to place it on top of the slope, because I do place it a bit over the edge, because if the player is looking at an angle from this, you can still see the tops of the trees through that, and if it's not there, it kind of looks like the forest ends up there, even if it's not, even if the player is not consciously seeing it that way. Okay, and I am cutting back a bit of the denser forest here, just because, well, it's going up a slope and the player won't really notice. Okay, so that's the forest placed on this side. So now I'll just place the forest on the other side. Here it's much quicker, as you can see. Okay, so now I'll actually, let's see. Yes, I need to, I was thinking if I should place the, put down the forest texture first or remove the trees first, and I'll remove the trees first, because then I can see where the forest texture should go. And here where there's a cut, well, it's been dug away slightly, I'm not going to have any trees there, because they wouldn't have grown. Yes, probably. I mean, they might have, if this is an old railroad, but I think it looks better if the trees aren't there for that. Also, we want to keep a bit of space for the camera, so maybe going back a bit further even. Actually, maybe some of these trees should stay over here. And I'm leaving the trees a bit close to the track here until we get to where the water tower is, because that's where the road starts and where sort of the turning area is going to be. So I'm going to remove a couple of trees. Actually, no, I think it looks quite good with the tree kind of obscuring the water tower a little. Maybe not that much. Maybe it was good the way it was before. Or maybe turned a bit like that. Yeah, I think that looks nice. It kind of emphasizes the height of the water tower. And then here, we need to have kind of an area cleared like this. Maybe even going back here. And then it continues back to the tracks. And with this we can leave the trees really close to the road. Because, well, one, the road will have automatically created some space for the camera to move. And two, well, it's not used that much, so it can be a bit overgrown. Okay. Maybe have a couple of trees over on this side as well. Maybe a bit further away. Maybe like this. Maybe this one a bit further away as well. And we could also use another couple of shrubs over here. Maybe this one a bit lower. Kind of like that. From the other side. Well, it's a bit dark because it's TRS-19, but still, I think it looks okay. I mean, it'll look better if you're playing with shadows and with a darker texture underneath. So going along here. Maybe it's a bit too close. Actually, kind of like the small tree here. Small enough. That's okay. And these shrubs I am moving because I do want this area back here that's a bit more grassy to feel a bit fuller. Actually, here we can remove the trees if we maybe add a bit of rock where this cut is. So we can have it come down here. Oops, meant to move that. There we go. And I think it could look quite good if we had a few more trees kind of over here. Sorry, because there is this little slope down here. So if we put some trees over there, it would elevate the track. Or it would, yeah. And then just delete a few more trees. I think that's okay. Maybe move this a bit back. So now if we look down here, yeah, I think that's a nice scene kind of here with a track on the side. And this is another good opportunity to have some more trees on the edge. Oh, and by the way, if you're watching this live and you don't have an account, or you don't want to type in the chat, or can't type in the chat, I mean, or if you're watching this archived version, but you'd like to still give some input into the root, then we do have a Discord server where you can get in touch and yeah, give suggestions or comments about the root if you like. Actually, I will put this in chat if I can. 1 second, because then you'll be able to see it as well on the archive. One second, I just need to actually find the link. I didn't have this ready, if you couldn't tell. There we go. Where is it? 1 second. Ah, there it is. Okay, so I'm just posting it in chat now. So yeah, that is the Discord. If you go there, you can get in touch if you, yeah. Although it should be that one. Huh. I've just tried opening the link, and it doesn't seem to work here. Okay, I'll check that later, and either it's just not working at the moment, or if there's something wrong with the link, if you're watching this archived, I will have the correct working link in the description of this video, if you're watching it archived on YouTube. So yeah, okay, yeah. So how how do the trees look? I mean, this scene does look good, but if you're coming down here and you want to look down the valley, you get tree cam. Although it does open up a bit down here. I think we need to remove some of the trees here as well that are close. Maybe like this, so that you do get this opportunity to view the valley before going down into this narrower bit, and then it opening up here again. Yeah, we do need to do that. Okay, so now let's continue with texturing. So I'll do the ballast next. You know, just building these kind of scenes with sidings and water tower and switches just gets me really excited to make sessions for this route, which I will do when it's finished, but I kind of want to do it now because I mean, I'm just imagining a session where the player is coming up this track and there's already another train waiting here for another player to pass, or there are some cars to be picked up because a different locomotives failed, or something like that. and I just really want to put the Trainz on. Okay, so how does that look? Yeah, that looks okay. Now we just need to do the sidings. And yeah, okay, yeah, that looks good, I think. Okay, so now let's do the dirt texture around the road and this area, and then we'll do the forest texture. Okay, because I do actually already have a texture that I put down here. This one, which, if you're curious, is TB TSM Ballast 3. Oh, and another thing is, if you're curious about any of the assets I'm using, the asset KUID, so the ID of the asset, the ID number, is displayed on in the lower right corner of the screen, and I know that on stream it's probably very difficult to see, if it might even be impossible to see, and also the archived version, it's even worse because of YouTube's compression on top of Twitch's compression. But in the tutorial series, I'm recording Trainz at a lower resolution, which means that the user interface is bigger. So you should be able to see the KUID of the selected asset if you see one that you like in the tutorial series. Or if you've got an account, you can just ask in chat if you're watching live. So, okay. Now I just need to paint, oh, not that brush size, this brush size. Now I just need to paint underneath the road. And I will probably, yes, I will put in some more warmer, sort of more orangey, earthy tones in the dirt area, because although this texture looks quite nice with the road, it doesn't really look that well as an area covering. It does texture. It doesn't really fit that well with the rest of the palette. Okay, so now let's just have a look. Yeah, that looks good. Although here we could use a bit more on the left where the little groove is in the track. And here as well. Because I'm just basically trying to hide this hard edge of where the spline meets the terrain. And that's why I'm putting down the texture that kind of has a more similar color tone to the road. Here as well. And I'll save again. And I do save a lot because Trainz does, well, it is quite stable, but it does crash sometimes. For example, when I recorded the last tutorial video, which will be uploaded in a few days' time, maybe a week or so actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Trainz did actually crash. And I had to recreate what I'd done in the tutorial so that it would be seamless. It's actually in the video about asset palettes, if you're curious. Yeah, now I am just adding a bit more earthy, natural looking dirt texture dirt tones to this area here, and yeah, I think that already looks much better. Okay, and with this road spline, by the way, the ending is already tapered off, so I'm not sure if you can actually, I'll zoom up, didn't mean to do that. If I zoom into first person mode, which you can do by the way, if you zoom all the way in, you can hold right click to look around and use the arrow keys to walk around first person on your route, which is a really cool feature, which I didn't know for the longest period of time that I was playing Trainz, and actually in Trainz in Trainz in the era, you can do this by, I think it's pressing Control U or Y. It's either Control or Alt U or Y, because one of them goes into this view, but in Trainz in the era, there was also a view where you could fly around first person. So instead of being stuck on the ground, you could fly around, and actually they put a clue to this Easter egg in the newspaper that some of the in Trainz, passengers, and I'll just look for a shed to use here while I'm saying this, because in Trainz, the passengers that appear on platforms, sometimes, actually no, no, not on platforms, the passengers that appear sitting in carriages, they sometimes have newspapers on them, and if you zoom in, you can actually read part of what it says on the newspaper. And there was the Easter egg was about it said something about scientists discovering the I think it was Control U or Control Y keyboard shortcut, and that was the Easter egg they put in for people to find the basically the fly mode and first person mode. But in Trainz, and it's been in Trainz for a long time, I think. Yeah, it must have been a very long time. But in TRS 19, so Trainz Simulator 19, which I'm currently using, they got rid of fly mode, as far as I can tell, and they've put the first person walk around mode to zooming in all the way, and then you can walk around, the same way that they made it so that if you zoom out all the way, you zoomed out to a map, which is admittedly more easier to use, but it does kind of take away a bit from the fun of discovering it, if that makes sense. One second. Oh yeah, I've just seen that it's already quite dark on the camera, even though when I look outside, it's actually the sky is still bright. So yeah, just not getting picked up on the camera. Right. So I'll turn on the light. Here we go. Yeah, that's the right shed for this area. No. I mean, does this look good? Do you think this would fit here? I don't think so. This is an industry. Let's see what this industry has. Oh, it's got light goods on it. Although it's basically a multiple industry that's already been set up. That's actually a good asset. I think I'll put this asset in my pick list so I don't lose it, because this might be useful later on, although there's a different version of it. I'll put in the first one, so that the first in the list. No. Engine shed, no. Turntable, no. Maybe this. I mean, this is more closer to what I was thinking, although it's a bit too big. Maybe there's a smaller one somewhere. Oh, that looks good. Now, should we go with should we go with the wood one or the more aluminum or aluminium, depending on where you are looking one? And the thing is, I like the wood one better because it's prettier, but the aluminium one or aluminum one does look more realistic in a way. Of course, a wooden one looks realistic, but I think that it might feel more realistic if it's not that pretty, because even though I have complete control over this world and everything in it, well, within the limitations of Trainz, I do want to make it feel real, and in reality, this kind of siding area in the 60s might already have this kind of structure on it. Plus, it has a lamp above the door, which I don't know if it turns on at night. I could check, but I won't do that at the moment. But this, if I'm looking at this now, with this one with the lamp, I'm kind of picturing this. This could easily be part of a horror film, like, for example, with the characters, the point of view characters, are a train crew, and they're supposed to meet a train here. That they're the night crew for a crew switch, and the train, they've got word that the train's delayed, so they go in here into this little office space to wait for the train. It's like already like 2 in the morning, or maybe 1 in the morning. And it's just complete darkness out here. You can see the stars because there's no light pollution, and it's the middle of the night in this forest, yeah. And then they're inside. They start to hear noises outside, so they go outside, and they think that maybe they think that there could be a runaway train because they hear creaking like something's coming down the track. So they go outside and they look around to try to see if there's a train either way. So they look both sides, they can't see anything, so then they're going back to this cone of light which represents safety, and by the way, it's complete blackness. So they're coming up to it, and just as they're entering the cone, and they're not phasing into the wall, but they're just grabbing onto the handle, they hear a noise behind them, and we just see them in this cone of light just slowly turning around. And then, of course, we cut to the point of view of other characters inside. And yeah, I mean, we even have the water tower with a ladder that characters could try to climb up to escape whatever's monsters down below. Yeah, and then they could think that all hope is lost. But then the train approaches, blowing its horn, and then that scares away whatever was down there. And that could be how the film ends. So you can see just how much story you can see in a tiny detail. Like, for example, just the fact that this has this light above the door and this one doesn't. So yeah, I think I'll use this one. Although we could use the wooden one as well, maybe as kind of a shed that's attached on the side. Sorry. Okay, so just move this back a bit, maybe around here. And we could have this. Actually, I'm now thinking of this in terms of if this were a horror film. Because if this is kind of a maintenance shed where maybe spare parts or something are stored, it's a bit big for that, but maybe, or maybe it's an old structure. Then, if this was right next door, then the characters wouldn't have to cross a very large distance before they get back to safety. So, if I put this over here instead, and of course kind of angle it towards this way so you can see the door from this side, maybe a bit more even, so like this, you can just imagine somebody having to go over here. Maybe the fuses are in there, that's the thing. Yes, the fuses blow out and they have to get the radio back on, maybe to warn an approaching train, maybe something's happened to the tracks. You can just imagine them having to go over here, fixing the fuses, and then just stepping outside into the darkness with a flashlight and seeing the safety of the light cone over there above that door, but they have to cross this huge area, so they start to run, and they run across, and we can cut to this action scene of something following them. You can see their footsteps as they run across, maybe stepping into a puddle, splashing as they run over here and run on the door and just go in. And this, of course, would happen when the characters are still paranoid and we think that there's probably nothing here. Oh, and I just see that someone's, another person's in the chat. Yeah, we're just building this little area, and I'm kind of on a tangent about a horror film that could be set here. So yeah, this chase scene from this house over to the right, to the left. At this point, the audience, the monster hasn't shown itself yet. So at this point, the audience and the characters, it's still kind of paranoia. They think something's out there. They don't feel safe. So they need to run across this action scene, and we don't even see the monster yet. Only then later, we realize just how much danger the characters were in running across this area. So yes, based on the horror film point of view, the distance between these buildings needs to be at least this far apart. It doesn't matter if it would make sense for the buildings to be close to each other. No, they have to be this far apart. And of course we need like a Land Rover or something like that, just an all-terrain vehicle. Yeah, that one looks good. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think I'll put it kind of to the side here. Yeah, and I mean, and that looks good even if you don't know the history of this place or under what aspect it was built. It still looks good to have a vehicle around here. And I'm not too bothered about whether this is actually from the 60s or 50s or so. As long as it kind of fits, I'm okay with it. I'm much more interested in the scene actually looking and feeling right. Also, maybe some barrels, because there are always barrels around places. Yeah, just a few rusty barrels. Maybe over by this side. Sorry. Maybe just a couple of them here. And yeah. Oh right, the texturing. I completely forgot what we were actually doing. So next is the forest texture. Okay. So I'll use a bit of a smaller-ish brush here to kind of paint the tree line, because this does require a bit more accuracy. then over here. Oops, didn't think it would undo that much. Okay, I'll save and I'll have a look. I'll have a look to see how close this is. And here we'll put the... Actually, no, we might actually have this as the grass texture still. It might look better, actually. And then if we have the grass spline over this... Because I was going to say we'll have this as rock, but it's not really very tall or steep. So I think it's better if we leave grass there. Oops, did not mean to do that. So it goes along here. A bit more grass back there. Maybe a bit more over here. Maybe not there. And then we're kind of, and yes, we do need to move some of these trees back as they're growing out of the ballast. Kind of putting it along there. Yeah, that looks okay. I'm just imagining how it will look with the grass spline over it. Onto here, and here we do need to actually, should we put the forest texture underneath here, or should we leave it as as grass? Because leaving it as grass indicates that this area is already a bit more well kept, so I mean under control, if that makes sense. So they're clearing out some of the shrubbery along here, rather than just letting it overgrow. I think we'll leave it for now. I mean, when we add the splines, we'll see what it actually looks like. I do want to move this tree back a bit now that the sort of gravel texture has been placed underneath the road. And in case you're wondering, that is coming up with these little stories or scenes around spots along the route while I'm building is kind of what I always do. I don't usually go into that much thought or detail about it. Mostly it's just kind of a feeling of an area, but in some cases, like just then, the thought does carry on a bit. Oh, we have a new viewer. Hello, welcome to the stream. Yeah, so what was I saying? Yes, sometimes the thought does carry on a bit, and I do come up with some really quite in-depth stories or scenes about certain places. And what I'll usually do is I'll give an object at those places a fitting name. So for example, this water tower, if I go over to the properties tool and give it a name, this sort of siding, this whole area, we could call it maybe Horror Point, and that could be an interesting Easter egg for someone who buys the route or plays on the route. If they're looking at the map and they see, oh, there's a place called Horror Point Siding or Horror Point Water Tower, I wonder what that's about. And then if they go there and look, maybe they can feel a bit creeped out if they think of it with that name. And then that's going to be a little Easter egg. So Should horror point be one word? Horror point? Or maybe like that? I think it should be one word. Horror point, water tower. Oh, not water town. Tower. Is that right? The lights kind of... Here, I need to actually move this a bit. One second. Okay. Yes. Horror point, water tower. Kind of has a ring to it. And if I zoom out on the map, actually you can't see it because I need to enable industry names, but if I go here and I enable industry names, which you can select what should be enabled if you click on the left corner here. So if I enable that, you can see it says Horror Point Water Tower over here on the map. And if you really wanted to, you could rename you could rename the signals and junctions as well, so that this junction could, for example, be named Horror Point Siding South J Horror Point Siding South 1, or this one J Horror Point Siding South Main, because it's the junction on the main line. But that just takes a lot of time. I did do that for a route once, and yeah, it just takes a lot of time to do, and it does add a bit more realism for someone who's playing on the route, but I don't think that that's worth the time. I mean, it also does make it a bit easier if you're making sessions to know if you want to set a particular junction or make a train wait at a particular spot if they're named, but you can just fly over to the junction and see what it's named and then type that in. So overall, I think that that's not really worth it if you're making a route that's of any considerable size. I mean, if you're only making a yard and that's the entire route, which does sound fun in some ways. If you're making a lot of switching scenarios, you have to do that. Then yeah, I think that naming the junctions and signals could be a good thing to add more realism to it. But for a larger route, I don't think it's really worth it. I've talked about that longer than I thought I would. Okay, so now back to finishing the forest ground texture on here. And again, I am going to texture this behind here, even though the player's not going to see it, because it does show up on the map. And I am going to actually use the copy and paste tool on this texture, because it does speed things up a bit, I've realized. You just need to be careful that you're not pasting, that the corner isn't touching an area of a different texture. So on this borderline, you have to be a bit precise with it. Second. Okay. And as you can see, in the top, on the top of the slope, I'm not sure. Well, if the player's coming along here and the camera's all the way down, you can't really see it. But if you zoom out a bit more, you can see that there is a part where there are no trees up here. So this part right here, the player can see. So, whoops. Yes, Trainz crashed. I just mentioned that. So just start it back up again. But I do save regularly, so that's not too big of an issue. And yes, here's the message that Trainz quit unexpectedly. Just ignore that. Actually no, I'll quit Trainz because I did start it a bit soon, so maybe the cache hasn't cleared yet. So I'll wait for a couple of seconds here, just to make sure it's quit properly, and then I'll start it again. And I know that you can see the black border right now. That's because Trainz, when I'm running it in full screen, I'm running it at a bit of a lower resolution, which OBS doesn't really deal that well. So that's, by the way, that's the reason why I'm running it in windowed mode for the live streams, so that you don't get that black edge. Also that I can switch back and forth in case I need to change something in the stream. Go the Milton Valley Railroad. And I'll edit the session for, like I said, let's see, do we want to revert the changes? Yeah, it may be corrupt, because you can revert some of the changes, use some of the changes that weren't saved, because they were kind of saved. It does make sense if you understand how it works, but there is a chance that part of the root could corrupt, so I don't do this usually. I just save often and then revert the changes, so that I'd rather remake part of the root that wasn't saved if it means that it's not going to be corrupt. And yeah, it's just this little bit of forest that we need to fill in. So I'll just quickly do this now. And since I've remembered that I can use the copy paste tool, I can copy the texture from over here and start pasting down here. Okay. We'll be back in just a minute or so. Really doesn't take that long. Also, something that I do after every session, after every root building session, is, I'll just save here. Yeah, is that I make a backup of my root and any sessions I was working on, in the form of an exported CDP file, which I have actually made a tutorial on. If you don't know how to do that, it's uploaded on YouTube channel. It's actually the first one I uploaded. And yeah, because even though if you're making backups of your hard, see, because I'm editing the session, it automatically selected the session layer, so you need to select the root layer and then paste. That's why I lock it, because otherwise I would have just pasted all of those trees on the session layer, and then I would have had to merge the two layers again. But as I was saying before, even if you make backups of your hard drive, and that technically means that the Trainz database, which contains all of the downloaded assets and the assets that are built in, and basically everything that's installed, including your own content, it's not really in an accessible form. So if you'd want to get it back from a backup in case your hard drive failed or whatever, then you would need to either spend a lot of time in figuring out where the Trainz database is located, and then get those folders back and replace them, or you'd need to get the entire installation back to that state, which if your hard drives failed, you'd need to do anyways. But if it's a more minor thing, like maybe the database has been corrupted or something like that, it's just a lot easier if you have the root or whatever you've been working on in a CDP file format. You just need to drag it into the content manager and that's it. So yes, making backups of the root is an important thing. Actually, making backups in general is an important thing. Okay, I'm just kind of changing the terrain back here, because from down here you were able to see the edge right up there on the mountainside, which you shouldn't be able to, because that kind of breaks the illusion of this being a real place if you can see the edge. Yeah, I think that looks good. So now I just need to do the painting on this side. Actually, I need to remove some of the trees here, because you can see these corners of where I've pasted it, and it looks better if it's smoother. So what I usually do is I kind of trim it to make sort of rounder corners. It just looks more realistic. Actually, no, I kind of like the idea of having this little island of trees in the middle there. Yeah, I think that looks nice. Kind of distinguishes that particular spot along the valley over other places. Get rid of a bit more there. Kind of smooth this area out, maybe a bit more there. Actually, I kind of like this big one there. So now let's paint the textures. Oh, that's not the right texture. Why is that texture selected? It's odd. Sorry. This is the right one. And yeah, I'll just quickly go along the tree line. Okay, and now I need to paint back kind of the areas that I don't want the forest texture to be at. Okay. And we do need a bit more forest texture underneath these trees. And I'm actually going to go down to a very fine brush here, because this area will actually attract the player's attention, even from all the way back here. So it does pay off to actually paint this area. And saying this, I don't want the grass to go along this area, the forest to be along this area, because if you're going all the way back here, you can clearly see that gap, and it just looks a lot better if you can see that the care has been put in to actually making it look as good as it can without being ridiculous. And by ridiculous, I mean things like manually placing each individual strand of grass as an object because the splines don't meet the patterns that you wanted. I would class that as being a bit ridiculous. Ridiculous, not ridiculous. That just sounds ridiculous. Okay. So, second, just along here. And now we just need to fill in this back area. For that, I'll just switch the paste data types over to terrain textures, and then paste over here, because the last thing we copied, which was the sort of less dense, was it? Yes, it was sort of the less dense trees, did have the terrain texture underneath them. So here we go, saving again. Yeah. So now let's see, how does that look from this angle? I have to say it actually looks really good. If I'm just imagining driving sort of a heavy freight down this way, coming along here, down there, and then join back up to what we had done last stream, now the other side. And it does look a lot better coming from this side because the sun is behind us, which means that Train TRS-19's shading doesn't look that dark like it does when the sun is in front of you. And yes, I really like this. Just this sloping grade all the way down to the valley. I mean, it'll look even better when we add some more different terrain textures in some of the taller grass and some of the splines as well. So then we're going along here and off this way. Okay, well, let's do that now. Firstly, I'll draw in the taller grasses. Taller grasses? Yes, grasses. The taller grass texture, I mean. And I will increase the brush size a bit. Along here. And if we look back here, you can see that we've mostly got this taller grass running down the center of this valley. So if we continue with the same pattern going along here, then the sort of cut between the baseboards won't be that obvious. Because the cut between baseboards, where you've done scenery on one end and then you're doing all the scenery on the other side, can be quite obvious if you're not careful. So things like ridges in the terrain where you've made a hillside and then you made the other hillside align to that. You can have those. And also you can have the same thing with textures. So for example, over here, well, it's not that clear at the moment because I did the because I already changed it, but over here you can see kind of that, well, the sort of yellowish grass texture stops here. So if or over here, it's a better example. You can see that the edge of the two tiles is right down here. So if I go zoom in here, you can see, I'm not sure if this is being picked up on stream, but you can see a difference in the terrain height right here. You can see kind of a line running down this way, and it sort of vanishes here because I've changed the terrain over here, but it does continue along this way a little. And you can see this kind of ridgeway. Well, I say you can see, I'm not sure if you can see it on the stream or on the recording. So I'll just continue with the taller grass painting. And yes, I can see that there are already these patterns in here. So for this down here, I'll actually increase the texture size. Oh, no, that doesn't really. I was going to say I'm going to increase the texture size so that you don't see these patterns, but I think I'll just go over it with a smaller brush a bit later on to kind of get rid of the tiling of the texture. Kind of going along here, down this way. And then continuing along the valley. So this is quite steep over here. So after doing this, I usually take a look at what I'm doing from the point of view of the tracks, and I can see straight away that the tall grass on this hill doesn't look great. It looks much better if the hill's kind of obscuring it. So going down here, going along here, and the same thing over here actually for this bit of tall grass. This is okay. I think that, oh, actually we need a bit more down here in this kind of dip. And now I'll go with a smaller brush and kind of, while I'm twirling the texture by holding the square bracket, I'm kind of going over this area I've already painted, just to break up the repeating texture. And we'll have splines on here as well, which will help with that. Just take a few moments. And then we'll add the sort of more yellowish grass texture to this. Okay, now we'll do that. So yeah, last time I was just painting it over like this, because this is this is actually the same texture as the ground. So if I paint this over this, you can see that it's just a different hue. But last time I found out that it looks a lot better if this is also painted using the twirling method along here, because it does again break up the repeating pattern of the texture underneath it. And in this area I do think that maybe a little bit of water would look quite nice down there. But we don't really have any place for the water to go unless we want to change the entire valley. Or we could have a little lake, but I think that having a lake might subtract from the attention to what's close by the track. Because if we're looking down the valley from here, I mean, maybe not. Actually, I'll try that. Just put a little depression in here, and then I'll add some water, which at the moment is still underneath the ground because it's added at height 0. Now just slowly bring it up, and there we go. Maybe not this big of a lake, maybe just like something like this, and we need to raise the height up here a bit. Something like that. I think that looks good. Yeah, I think it looks good. If we're going back to the horror film idea of this area, there could be a scene where maybe before the night crew arrives, they might be going down this field down to the lake to, I mean, it depends. If there's a love interest, like a romantic subplot or something, you could have maybe a romantic scene down here. Or you could just have maybe if it's a father-son type thing, they could be having a very serious talk down here by the lake where you can hear the crickets and frogs croaking and things. Oh, another thing. I should really put a different texture down here, maybe a bit more muddy texture. So what about this one that's right to the side of it? What does this look like? Looks a bit dark. Maybe this one? Yeah. I think I'll just, well, what about this one? No, I want it to be a bit muddier. Actually, I'll just search for mud. Let's see what comes up. This one, maybe? No, we've got tire tracks in that one. This one's dried out, which doesn't really fit that well. Oh, this one looks quite good, I think. If you're watching this live and you have an account, then you can also type in chat if you have any input on this. Actually, this texture, although it's got quite a low resolution, actually no, it's too red. But you can actually use these textures that have lower resolutions. Sorry. That have lower resolutions further away, because obviously you won't be able, the player won't see it that close up. Maybe if I search for dirt. Is there a lot more textures coming up here? I'm searching for kind of an earthy tone. I mean, there is that. And actually now looking at it compared to the ballast of the track, it does actually look quite good. 1 second. Because they're both light tones. So yeah, I think I'll add this. And I will add it very close to the actual water, because if this is kind of a standing pond, then there won't be that much difference unless there's a drought or something. And I will fill the base as well. Now how does that look? I think it needs a bit of a darker texture in the water because it just looks too shallow the way it is now. Also, there'd be a lot of things growing in the water. Maybe things that are scary. You could even say monsters that might appear in a horror film. Actually, this looks quite good for underneath here. Let's see what this texture actually looks like. Yeah. Actually, I'll increase the scale of this so that we don't get as much of a repeating pattern down here. And I will leave a bit more lighter texture where it's a bit shallower. So like this. Oh yeah, now that looks good. You can see, if you're looking at it from over here, it just looks a lot deeper, like there's actually things growing in there. Sorry. That it's not just a, basically a gravel pit that's filled with water. Oh right, I remembered. The lighter grass texture. Yeah, I do get sidetracked a bit, as I'm sure you can tell. Okay, so we'll just need to finish up this little area here, and then we can get to adding some splines, and after that, this siding area I think will be finished, and then we'll be able to continue the route further along, and I think we should go for maybe another maybe 2 or 3 miles carrying along this valley until we get to a town where maybe we could have our first industry. So I'm thinking maybe a place to drop off general goods, which if you don't know much about trains, general goods are just basically boxes. So in this case they'd be transported with boxcars. So you could have local freight trains that are coming up this grade from sort of the bigger, more densely populated area below the mountains, so at the foothills of the mountains, and kind of dropping off a few boxcars here and there in some towns, which would be quite nice. So how does that look? I think we need a bit more of this lighter texture closer to the track, just to break up the pattern here, because you can see the pattern of the grass close to the tracks as well. Maybe a bit over here just to make it a bit more consistent. Just about there. Okay. Save. And now let's do the grass splines. Actually no, first I'll look at it from the map to see what it looks like. Oh, and this is an interesting feature. In TRS 19 and also Trainz: A New Era, so TANE, the map is actually 3D. You can see that the grid is not straight at all, because the mountains, the grid of the baseboard grid is going up and down. So if you look on the side here, on the left hand side, you can see it kind of curving, and if I go over here you can see that it becomes straighter because now we're looking at it head on. And that's an interesting thing which I think many people don't know. So yeah, looks good. So now we can place some of these grass splines. I'm actually enjoying documenting this route creation a lot, because not just because there's the opportunity to get feedback, even though at the moment not many people have actually typed in chat, but if things start to pick up a bit, that's going to be really useful. But also because when I'm route building, I get a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts behind certain decisions, like for example putting a pond here or the placement of these buildings, which usually gets lost with as time passes on. You're just left with a finished product. But since this is being documented through the live streams, well, it's being shared with the buyers of the route or people who download it, if they're watching the live streams, or if they've watched the live streams, and it's also documented for myself, so that in in maybe 10 years' time, I'll be able to go back to these live streams and think back and enjoy all the different things that went into making this route. Okay. So just finish up doing the grass plants down here, and then we'll do them by the tracks, and then that's going to be it, I think, for this area. Depending on how long this takes, we might still have a bit of time to put down some new baseboards for next stream, or have a little chat about, or think, considering that nobody's typing at the moment, think about what to put next baseboards, how the route should continue. Okay, now how does that look? This one. How does that look from this angle? Yeah, that looks good. A bit dense, but that's okay. This angle. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look great because it's dark because of TRS-19, but I think it looks okay. I think that's a bit too big, this spot, because I do want a little something in between here. Kind of bridge the gap. Okay, now let's do this area over here. I'll just save, because I've just noticed Trainz is a bit laggier than usual just now. Maybe it'll catch itself. How does that look? A bit more over there. Yeah, that looks good. I like these sort of shapes that that occur here, because it looks organic, it looks natural, like maybe rock concentration in the soil causes grass to grow taller here where it doesn't otherwise, and that kind of creates these patterns. Yeah, that looks good. So now we just need to place the grass along the edge of the right-of-way. Or rather along the edge of the forest. Now I don't want to put grass along this under these trees because again it is supposed to look a bit more kept than the forest, just to create a bit of contrast. And I'll do another save here. Okay, so it's clear that on some of these areas we do need to put some more grass a bit further back because we can see further into the forest because of the slope. Should we have taller grass on this grassy bit as well? Yes, it looks better. It definitely looks better. So if we just kind of scan along this area back here, put some more grass in where it's needed. Should we have grass along there? Yes, it's a slope. There should be grass growing along this way. This way. I think that looks good. I'll do save again. Then just kind of place grass a bit, another layer of grass essentially. And I don't do this everywhere. I just kind of do it. I mean, I know that at the moment I'm kind of doing it everywhere, but kind of here where it's being blocked by trees, it really isn't necessary. But over here where it's more open, it does add a lot if if you don't really see the forest floor that much. And it might look, I mean, it will probably look a lot different when the trees have shadows, but again, that issue hasn't been resolved yet. Actually, I've been in contact with the support team, and they say that hopefully it'll be resolved in the next update of TRS 19, but they can't tell me when that's coming. Okay. Now, should there be grass along this area? I think so, yes, because again, there is a slope there. You see this little slope down here, and that, in my experience, does look better if there are grass lines on it, at least in this kind of setting. Because if you see it, if you look at it, if you look at it now, it just looks a bit naked. So if you put grass over it, it looks a lot more natural, like an actual hill in a forest somewhere. Although when it flattens out like this, I mean at this point, at this place, I will add grass just because there's a lot of grass behind it. Although, actually yes, it does look better because there's grass behind it, but usually, like down here, I know that there's not a bit of grass here, but it is sloped. In this case, there's kind of this bank going around, which makes it look better here. But I do keep some empty space beside the track. I'm not sure if that makes any sense or if it just sounds completely random. But the thought in my mind made sense, so yeah. Yeah, that looks good. Maybe even bring the grass a bit closer in over here. Not that close. Maybe like this. What does it look like from this side? Yeah, I think that looks good. We also need a bit more over here. Not that close. Just to kind of narrow this area in a bit so it's a bit more symmetrical if it's closer on one side. It makes sense that it's also a bit closer on the other side here. Yeah, that looks good. Then we continue along here. We really need a few more spots of the darker, longer grass texture here so that we can put more grass plying down. Because there is quite a large area back there that doesn't really have any reason to have grass plines, and it would break it up a lot to have a bit more grass there. So I'll do that right after I've put down the grass plines underneath the trees here. Does that look better this way or that way? Actually, I kind of like it better this way because it gives this part a bit more character. Okay. Yeah, that looks good. So now I'll just add a couple more spots of the darker grass closer to the track. So maybe not that large of a brush. So just kind of along here a bit. And then also along here, just a little bit. And bring it right up to the tracks. Also along here, just to create some variety again. Okay, now I'll save. I'll just add the grass splines. Actually, I'll add them right up to the track here. Okay, over to the next area. Okay, that looks good. Over here. And what does that look like? Now we really need this to be connected here, I feel. Yeah, much better. So, I think that's this area done. So we come along here. Okay, well let's just do a quick fly through of the valley coming down from the junction, just to get a feel for the area when we're deciding where it should go next. So we've got this siding over here with a little town, then go up here and up here through the cut, and we go into the base of this valley, traveling along here, going through the second cut, and then the valley really opens up and we can see the little lake down to the right, and then kind of carries on here with the sidings, and the road joins, and then we go along there. Yeah, I'm happy with it. I really like how it's turned out. So okay, now we just have a couple minutes time to kind of think about how we want the route to continue. So I'll go to the map view. Okay, so originally I was thinking that we could have, because the bottom track continues straight along the right, which mean actually it's mirrored, so carries on to the right this way, because the camera is mirrored, so carries on to the right this way. And I was thinking that the top one and the bottom one, they could go over and then meet up again, or maybe cross over. But actually looking at this now, the line that goes northward actually goes quite northward, so maybe it would be more interesting if we had kind of, if the route was kind of like a triangle, so that you've got the bottom one that goes across, and then you've got two lines that kind of go up northward and join up at the top, and we could have kind of short branches going off wherever we want, really, creating industries along these points. But it might be quite interesting to have some sessions along that. And I mean, this will probably change as we carry on, but at the moment I think that's an interesting idea. And if you have input on this, feel free to message me on Discord. Yeah, so I think the northern line, not the northern line in London, but this northern line, I think it should carry on northward, maybe northwest, or maybe north by northwest, kind of that area. So yeah, we've actually got 1 minute and 5 seconds left. So I won't place the baseboards this stream, but we'll start doing that at the beginning of next stream. Also, apparently my words are failing me. So, yeah. There's just enough time to do another quick flyby the other way around. And it's amazing. I mean, even though I've been building Trainz routes for many, many years, it's still amazing to me exactly how much a landscape can transform. I mean, it's just been 2 hours, and the entire upper part of this valley was transformed from being a mess of a terrain, like a few spikes on terrain and some track that's almost floating in midair, to a stunning piece of scenery. I'm sure you'll agree. Yeah, I mean, it still amazes me, because Trainz has so many great tools to do this sort of thing. Yeah, it's just a really good creative outlet. Oh, and as I just see, we've passed the end point of the stream. So, with that, I'm ending the stream. So, have fun, and yeah, that's the end of the stream. Bye.